Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is Preacher Marsh, your host of the ShOUT Show. Welcome to, I'm hoping you have an excellent Saturday. This is probably one of the toughest days to actually do a show. Everybody's out. It's a nice day. And I chose a topic that may not be the best topic, but I have to tell you, I have enjoyed putting together a show for you on this. So hopefully if you don't see it, maybe you'll see it later. You can listen to it. This is probably one of my not even challenging show, but really talking about things that we're saying, current events in real time, if you will, and being able to expand on it a little bit. So the title of my show, it is not a mistake. The title of my show, brothers and sisters, is affectionately, and I say affectionately coming from the whole Black experience, things I like to put in perspective in a group: white supremacy, serial killers, and dollar stores. Let me say that again: white supremacy and dollar stores. Now, what I would like to do is take the different aspects and weave them, if you will, into a very cohesive understanding, a very cohesive argument for what we're dealing with today. When I look at some of the things that we're seeing on television today, there's a lot of talk about white supremacy, 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 which is a well-known topic. It is something that rolls off of our tongue. It has been rolling off our tongue for quite a number of years. But I did some reading and I did some investigation, if you will, understanding that white supremacy is a tactic tool. It's something for us to attach ourselves to and give our emotions to. White supremacy is not a person. Supremacy is a choice. And when I say it's a choice to engage in a particular type of behavior that ultimately can corrupt society, in society. It's disadvantage. It's about who gets into that situation, that scenario. Let me be clear. All white supremacists aren't white. We have some people who take advantage of white supremacy in particular situations and apply it accordingly. Now, with that being said, I would like to move a little bit away from white supremacy and get to the scope of a little bit of history of the United States. Part of the problem that the United States has had and continues to have in terms of its idea of American exceptionalism around the world, and I am American too, and I have been prone to, again, white supremacy and privilege. Let me say that right up front. Privilege. I have some privilege and I have exact privilege at certain points in times. I think we all have. It's that small thing that thinks makes us think we're a little bit better than one another. I talk about oppression back in the day being comprised of three things, if you remember: arrogance, envy, and iniquity. And those things are always going to be in us. The aspect of white supremacy is that we make it a playbook that's applicable for things that are real and things that are imagined. Things that are real, things that are imagined. And when we get into the scope of things that are real and imagined, it is interesting because white supremacy is a pathology. We talk about sociopath and psychopath, and it's a particular pathology that has a root, if you will. Now, follow me for if you can. I know this is a little tricky, and I normally don't do the show like this, but this has intrigued me, brothers and sisters, since I was a little kid. Imagine if everything that you see in terms of race, riots, demonstrations, protests, looting, had a numerical value, or it had an algorithm that people are allowed to tie into. Like when a store is looted, or the idea that there may be a riot, if you will. Do you ever notice that when it happens, there's nobody in those stores? There's nobody necessarily protecting. And because that aspect is interesting, because you would think somebody wants to protect their store, but they don't. They're at home, the owner's at home, they watch the store get looted in most cases, they have insurance, but it's part of a process. And that process brothers and sisters, is something that's called behavioral economics. Behavioral economics. One of the most powerful driving spaces of expertise, of knowledge, one of the most respected pieces of any kind of data in the United States has to do with economics. Whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's financial, it has to do with economics. And the scope of behavioral economics is that it prides itself on predicting behavior. The scope of it is we predict behavior wrong, but we continue to predict it wrong, thinking that we'll predict it wrong and at some point in time it'll turn around, and it just doesn't turn around. It's sort of like the aspect or the mantra or the concept of a serial killer. Now, I'm not advocating serial killers, but listen to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the persona and the dynamic makeup of why they are so successful. The serial killer is successful because the serial killer thinks outside of the norm in terms of behavioral output. But in terms of his victim, he predictably and successfully, over a long period of time, figures out the characteristics and the behaviors and the tendency of his victim. White supremacy has done the same thing. Now, the issue and the importance of talking about white supremacy and serial killers is this scope of adaptability. They are some of the most adaptive people in the world. If you think about Congress, and I'm talking about the older members of Congress, like the older members of Congress who were there when there were votes on race identity issues, voting, things like that. And you look at their voting record, and you realize that some of these people who are in Congress right now, who are legislators for a long time, and we give them all kind of, if you go back and look in the space where they worked, some of them voted for legislation that was against African American, indigenous, and poor people. Those are the facts. However, we somehow think that with advancement, these people nuance into ideas and philosophies that we think are endearing to us. They did not. That is the idea of the serial killer and the white supremacist. They're going to give you that space, and they're going to give you some things that are going to allow you to reveal what your behavior is, and they frame behavior around that. For example, this may be a stretch. Think about an election cycle. What is an election cycle? Is it a cycle about decisions, and is it a cycle about information? Information and decisions in constant, in constant engagement, going round and round and round. The person that we're talking about, the serial killer, knows at some point in time, I can't stop it from going round and round and round. So what they do is they affect everything around it. Per se, if I don't want you to vote and I know you're going to vote, I can't really stop that. But what I can do is I can change the condition and how you think about voting. I can make you feel in some regards, and it's happened on Facebook and some of the social media issues, I can make you feel in many regards that your vote is not going to count. Or I can make it difficult to where you, when you get to the polls, that I don't feel like voting. I have to go through all these troubles, and it's disheartening. That is, again, from the disenfranchisement playbook, but it is effective. There are studies about people who are captured and held, kidnapped by people who absolutely detest the situation. They fight against it, but then in the end, they wound up loving the person who's oppressing them. They love the person who's oppressing them to the point they'll tell the police, no, he's good to me. Daddy is good to me. And all these things, you've been oppressed, but the mind changes. I would say that in the aspect in terms of Black pride, Black empowerment, what's happened lately is that people understand that the Black intelligentsia is moving in different ways. We can attribute this to the aspect of being able to have independent and critical thinking on social media, technology, things like that. Right now, we're having a nuance in terms of how we give out information with this whole thing of live streaming and online activity. People have figured out how to do long online communication that it circumvents, if you will, it circumvents what white supremacists and quote unquote not my favorite people, but serial killers do. And I have to break it down in terms of how they think, because I didn't realize how deep it was until everyone was in a space about George Floyd. George Floyd was not the first person to be killed as a result of police brutality. Police brutality happens all the time. What is interesting is how we react to police brutality. This is one scenario where white supremacy and serial killers were wrong because we reacted a certain way. However, what's important now is that we reacted, period. And once you react, again, that aspect of adaptability in some regards, hiding in plain sight of African Americans, Latinos, the poor, the people who are oppressed, hiding in plain sight of the oppressed, we can't see them. We can't see them. And because we can't see them, we can't address their behavior. It's always going to be they address our behavior. And once they have it, they adapt. Behavioral economics is about this, brothers and sisters. The way we act has to be a scenario where we have flexibility. We have tangible change. We're able to pivot quickly. The enemy spends time on you. Some of the things that have happened, this whole slew, if you look at all these things of police brutality, I saw something on Netflix where a guy, he listed all the people who were killed as a part of police brutality. He needed to understand that it's happened over a period of time. And that time is investigation time. They'll tell you this. You can talk to FBI reporters. They'll say that serial killers are some of the most meticulous people in the world. In that when they choose their victim, they take notes. They look at habits. They know when you're home. They know who your friends are. They know what time you go to bed, what time you wake up, how much gas you put. There is a study that's happened. White supremacy is no different. White supremacy is no different. And I would say that from the time of slavery, if not before, we have been a part of a case study that continues today. Interesting thing about white supremacy, and I've talked to one or two white supremacists in my time. Tell me about black people. Tell me about Latinos. You know what he said? His name was Gary. I want to call him Gary Cracker. Let's just call him Gary Cracker. Gary Cracker said to me, the reason why white supremacy works is because blacks and Latinos are so predictable. I said, meaning what? He said, we'll do whatever we want to with you, but the behavior we're going to get from you is that you're going to forgive us. We don't want your forgiveness. We want access. Think about that. We don't want your forgiveness. We want access. And we'll give them forgiveness, and true to form, we will give these people access. Think about Dylan Roof coming into a church, praying with people before he killed them, because we give that access. This is a prime example of what I'm talking about. And I'm saying, not saying access, I'm saying look and line up these things, brothers and sisters, that you see slowly creeping in. White supremacy, serial killers, and my last piece, dollar stores. Dollar stores, brothers and sisters, are very, very, very dangerous parts of our community. They follow a chain of transmission that you may not be clear about. You patronize a dollar store because you're thinking, I can get $1. How many times have you really gone into the dollar store and spent $1? You're not going to spend $1. If you spend $1, it's going to be a tax, $1.02. So then you begin to understand, but go back. The scope of the dollar store is almost like the scope of white supremacy and serial killers in contemporary language. In that, brothers and sisters, doesn't matter whether you're black or white, brothers and sisters, Latinos, gays, lesbians, whatever, brothers and sisters, it is the adaptability of white supremacy of everything we want to get from you people. We understand that we can't get it all at one time. So that other feature of the white supremacist and the serial killer, and even the dollar store, is sabr. It's patience. It's the most cruelest, dangerous patience you could ever be engaged in. Patience. They're willing to wait. And they're willing to wait till your behavior either changes or it's compromised and they can do what they want to do. As we begin to run out and protest, the numbers of COVID go up. Maybe someone said, if the people are sick come voting time, they can't stop what we're trying to do. You can't get to the polls. You can't get to the polls. There's no voting, no write-ins, nothing like that. I won in some regards. They're willing, brothers and sisters, to get it a little bit at a time. Now, I'll bring up dollar stores. Okay, I'll bring up dollar stores. Dollar stores have a particular history in poor neighborhoods. Let me tell you what that history is. The dollar store is a distant cousin of the payday loan shop that you used to see. Remember payday loans? Before they were outlawed for predatory lending? Payday loans gave people the idea that they had access to money, but you didn't have access to money. And if you really looked at the majority of the payday loans, they didn't give you big money. The most you could probably borrow was $1,000. You may have needed $20,000 or $5,000, but you were willing, pay attention, to get a little bit at a time. And you engage, some people engage in this relationship where they paid the money and they paid the interest and they thought that qualified me for another loan. They gave them more money, but you paid more interest. Till a point came where you couldn't pay the interest and you couldn't pay the loan, and there is your predatory lending. It's the idea that these people at the payday loan place are willing to wait. Ironically, when the push of by black-owned businesses came about, they had a good run. Wasn't a great run. They had a good run. But what happened was the disappearance of the mom and pop shops. First you had Walmart, and anybody knows wherever Walmart pops up, mom and pop shops go away. That's it. The conglomerate poison kills them all. And once Walmart was established, they said, well, Walmart said I can't get all the money. And these businesses said we can't get all the money. He said we can slow bleed these people and get it a little bit at a time. So a store may want you to come in and spend $20. But the concept of the dollar store is you don't have to spend $20. But we want you to make 20 visits. And 20 visits at $5 a visit is, what is it? It's $100. All they were looking for was $20. But they figured out behavior. They've understood that you're walking the dollar store thinking, I'm the king, I can afford things in the dollar store. Well, damn it, guess what? They still cost the dollar, and a dollar adds up. But they've broken the thinking down to you believing it's all right to get something a little bit at a time. It's normal now. Dollar stores are illegal. If I could come up with legislation about dollar stores, I outlaw them all. I tell my mom, you can't go in there, especially the elderly. The elderly go in the dollar store and they spend a fortune. You know why? Because our moms and our dads are on fixed incomes from the government, and they think I can only give out a little bit of time. And the dollar store is like, hey, Miss Hattie, I'm over here. I got your dollar. Knowing that, they're going to be patient. And they're going to get that dollar, but they're going to get another $100 over a period of time. Patience. It's interesting because that same patience, they don't want African Americans to have. They don't want Latinos to have, Native Americans to have. They don't want women to have. And I'm circling this whole thing around. They want you to have patience for what they want you to have. Anything other than you having patience or a lack of patience for your own personal growth and development. So you see, brothers and sisters, the white supremacist and the serial killer are adaptable animals, if you will, but they're adaptable based on the fact that they believe that you're going to make the same decisions over and over and over again, even if it's the wrongest decision, and you'll get the same results. You'll do it again because they believe that we are irrational people and we will continue to make irrational decisions. Now, some people might be a little shook by this, whatever, and maybe I'll have to do another show to explain it, but it's very, 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 very clear. In the Quran, it says something to the fact, and I'm not a scholar, about, there are things that are good for you that are actually bad for you, and there are things that are bad for you that are actually good for you. These people, in a very negative and evil way, have perfected that. everything I give you is wrong for you, but you may think it's wrong and you'll say it's wrong, but you're going to take it anyway. And they may not get you the first time or the second time or the third time, but that's the beauty of patience. That's the evil of patience with some people. I'm going to wait you out. In the court system, they have a scenario about murder. They said, how to catalogate a murder. What's the word? Cold premeditated murder, right? Cold premeditated murder means that there was a plan in place. One of my favorite shows is Columbo. And Columbo kind of comes in. I don't know if anybody watches Columbo. It just came up on this service called Peacock. I don't even like the service. I just like that they have all the episodes of Columbo. Back to my point. The framework of Columbo, at the beginning of the shows, they show you who committed the murder. They show you who committed the murder. And then Columbo comes in and he knows you did it. But he will, in his own way, develop all the clues and the evidence against you to prove that you did murder. The interesting thing is the person who's the killer or the serial killer, the white supremacist, won't walk away. If you do a murder, normally you run. Interesting enough, white supremacists, what is their main thing? Homeland, my way of living, stand your ground. Listen to the tune, to some of the words that tie in. Protect my homeland, the soil, stand your ground. Things like this, they're not coming out of some kind of a conjecture, people. This is language that fits the situation. Dollar stores have staked their reputation on the fact that we don't find anything wrong with buying things for $1. So if we want a 6-pack of soda, we don't buy a 6-pack of soda. We buy 6 sodas. Each one an individual transaction. And we don't find anything wrong with that. It's an evil genius. If you want to say what it is, it's a very evil genius. And the thing that hits today, the thing that really, really hits today is this scope that we are not in that space of saying, wait a minute, we can make behavioral economics work for us. So while we're having these memorials and things like that, let's start looking at the numbers. What would happen after a memorial of 60 to 70,000 people applying or appearing at a memorial, and somebody said, tomorrow morning, go into work 2 hours late. Show your disapproval. And let's be even more diabolical. We're not going to tell everybody. We're not going to make it a list of demands. We're not going to broadcast it over social media. It'll be a nod. It'll be a handshake. And everybody knows. Why is this genius? People, we come from a culture that has had to go through a scenario where out of the worst conditions, we create miracles. Did you ever think about slaves back in the day who escaped? Do you realize there was no social media? There was no internet, no email. It was intention. And it was intention in a situation you couldn't even believe in the people around you because they had house Negroes and field Negroes. But the genius was they figured out the behavior economics of the master. And it made the master feel comfortable, even when he shouldn't feel comfortable. And that gave them the leave and the space to run, the leave and the space to educate themselves, the leave and the space to find skills, develop skills that they didn't use for the master. But when their freedom came, they now had pliable skills that they could use. Do you understand the genius that we're missing out on? The behavioral economics, teaching our children, listen, learn the skill, refine the skill, but don't give it away. Because when we talk about America, America is used to minorities in particular giving away their secrets, being gracious, share with me in a scenario where they don't share with us. Now I'm running overtime, and I want to apologize, people. I probably should have expanded this a little bit more because this is a crazy topic, but it has a lot of merit. White supremacy, serial killers, and dollar stores. Do you see the relationship? Let me run it back for you. White supremacists and serial killers are successful not because they're able to kill, they're successful because they're able to be adaptable on the way to killing. They're adaptable, meaning that they learn habits and behaviors. This cuts down on a lot of things they need to do. So a good racist, if you will, is a student, not a teacher. A great racist is a person who's visionary. They predict on what behavior is going to be. What do you think polls are, brothers and sisters? There's no other time we really take polls in America. Like black people don't take polls. White people take polls on black people, but we don't take polls. The Muslim community conducted polls, Pew, things like that, but that wasn't the nature of our folks. This is a late type of device coming through. And what did the polls tell us? It told us who we were dealing with, even amongst ourselves. And I have to say this, that whole idea of white supremacy is that this oppression, if you will, is agile. It can flow, it can move, it can be in front of you, behind you, all those things. Are you aware that as much as we're arguing and we're protesting about George Floyd and the injustices done to him, African Americans, Latinos, gays, women, Native Americans, do you know in the Senate, we still can't get an anti-lynching bill passed? You know why? Because white supremacists are agile. They know how to move a little bit. And I love my brothers and sisters. But my mentor, John Harry Weber, once said about black people, he said, I love black people. My problem is, we're great at making moves, horrible at making decisions. Behavioral economics, brothers and sisters, is making decisions. And then making decisions and then implementing solutions. So let us not be loose about this. This whole idea of white supremacy, I had to break it down a little bit because I think we're going down a road where we blame it for our pain and we blame it for our misery. I want you to look at the science of it and look at it as an algorithm, a very successful algorithm. But every successful algorithm isn't always correct. It can go awry, if you will. And we have to look at the point of where it goes awry. Or we have to issue situations and conditions whereby it will go awry. Give you an example. If you took a little piece of paper, right? Or a piece of steel, if you will, and there was a little pebble in it, a little imperfection. And every time around in a circle, the imperfection would get a little bit bigger. It get a little bit bigger. It get a little bit bigger. Get a little bit bigger. Now, for the first year, it doesn't look like anything. Second year, third year, okay, a little bit. Imagine the imperfection 400 years. Imagine the imperfection 400 years later. Now you can't fix it. So I'm telling folks, maybe this time around, like James Baldwin, this time, the fire this time around, we start looking at developing our own algorithms. And so maybe white supremacy looks at it and go, oh, it's a small thing. And maybe in 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, they're the ones dealing with the massive imperfection and they can't correct it. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my homies from home, Brother Linda Bilal. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. He blocked the anti-lynching bill. This is 2020. We talk about people getting choked out. And here it is. Why is he successful? Because he's figured out, in some regards, the nuance, if you will. That little imperfection that we're going to choke on every time. And he's done his homework, brothers and sisters. This is not mistaken. He's done his homework. And I'm not saying that Rand Paul is a white supremacist or a serial killer. But I'm telling you this, he's from Kentucky. There's damn sure dollar store. Listen, I got to get out of here. I'm going to give my last shout out. Brother Jabril Ali, thank you for coming, man. And come back to the show next time. I appreciate everybody dealing with me on this situation. I'm just asking everybody to think a little bit differently this time around with racism and things like that. Before we rush to the next rally for people that want to stand in solidarity with black people, you need to tell them, do you understand about white supremacy, serial killers, and dollar stores? And if a guy goes, I own a dollar store, get the hell out of there. I'm Preacher Moss. Have a great Saturday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Be great. And remember, Allah is God. Keep it simple.